Hello and welcome to the program. It's April 13th, and if you haven't done your taxes yet, you'll definitely want to get on that as soon as possible since Tuesday is tax day. Now, hopefully, you're one of the lucky ones who will be getting some money back from Uncle Sam, because we could all use it right about now. And now for today's program. The month of April is Alcohol Awareness Month. It's a time to raise awareness and understanding of alcohol abuse. It is estimated that more than 140,000 deaths occur every year in the U.S. due to excessive alcohol use. And if you or someone you know is struggling, there are ways to get help. There are several agencies right here in North Texas that can help you and your loved ones. And among them is Recovery Resource Council. Their mission is to promote wellness and recovery from disorders relating to alcohol, substance use, trauma, and mental health, with campuses in Fort Worth, Dallas, and Denton. They are the most comprehensive nonprofit behavioral health care provider in North Texas, and they've been serving our area since 1946. Joining me on the phone to talk about the work that they are doing is Becky Devine. Becky is the Director of Special Projects at Recovery Resource Council. Becky, welcome to the program.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
Becky, I meet so many people who have a loved one struggling with alcohol or with substance use disorder, and they really don't know what to do to help them. I know for years I was at a loss in trying to help a dear friend of mine who, unfortunately, we lost to alcohol abuse 4 years ago, and it was one of the toughest things that I've ever had to witness. What do you want people to know about someone who is dealing with addiction, whether it is to alcohol or to drugs?
Yeah, Anna, that is, I got goosebumps just hearing you, share that little bit that you did about your personal story, because it resonates with me personally, and I know that it resonates with so many people, right? So even when you hear somebody just talk about sort of the tip of the iceberg of their own personal story, nowadays it just seems like we all know somebody, either directly or indirectly, who is struggling with substance use or who unfortunately has lost a loved one to substance use. These days it feels like there's only a couple degrees of separation. And so it resonates, right? Like you said, it brings up our own personal issues because we all know somebody. Supporting a loved one through addiction can be heartbreaking, and it's so complex. I think if I was speaking to a loved one, who has somebody close to them that's struggling, the most powerful thing you can offer is your presence in their life, your patience, your understanding without judgment. Educate yourself about addiction, learn about the resources that are available, and encourage your loved one to seek the professional help that they need. At the same time, though, it's also very important that you set clear and healthy boundaries to protect your own well-being. Without firm boundaries, helping can unintentionally blur into enabling very easily. And again, I have personal experience with this in my own family. So if your loved one isn't ready to accept help, don't internalize that. It's not a reflection of how much they love you or how much they value their own life or their job or their family, right, et cetera, kind of as the story goes. Addiction is a disease. Your role as a loved one isn't to fix them, but to walk alongside them, to support them. Recovery and treatment, it's a journey. It's not a linear journey by any means, but the steady support of a loved one can really make so much difference.
Becky, can you explain how just telling someone who's dealing with alcohol abuse or substance use disorder, telling them to stop, just quit, or telling them to go into rehab, how that doesn't necessarily work?
That is, of course, our knee-jerk reaction many times, right? Oftentimes when we are interacting with a loved one, it's hard to understand if you've never experienced it. And from the outside looking in, it can very much look like that person has hit rock bottom, maybe multiple times. And so it can be very difficult to grasp why somebody can't stop, why somebody, despite all of the negative consequences that they are suffering from, just can't bring themselves to a place where they can abstain from this very dangerous activity, this substance use that they're engaging in. What people oftentimes don't truly understand. I mean, I think we've gotten better in society about saying it and talking about it, but really understanding is that addiction is a disease. It's not just a moral failing. It's not just a series of bad choices. It's oftentimes an outward expression of somebody's deeper unresolved pain. That can be trauma, that could be chronic stress, it could be untreated mental health conditions, it could be things going on in their home that we're not aware of. Many individuals who struggle with substance use are really just trying to self-medicate to function, or an unhealthy coping mechanism. So when we can shift our mindset from what is wrong with you to what happened to you, from judgment to compassion, we can really start creating that space for healing. Recovery is possible for people, anybody. It is within reach for anybody who wants to do that, but it really starts with understanding the why behind the behavior of substance use.
Recovery Resource Council, you all are on the front lines in this battle to help people and families. What do you want someone who finds themselves in the grips of addiction to know about taking that first step?
Addiction can feel very lonely. It can feel very isolating. It oftentimes, as it progresses in someone's life, it oftentimes leads to burned bridges, to ruined relationships. Like I mentioned earlier, you have loved ones who are close to you who may get to a point where they are going to enforce those boundaries, and they're going to have to maybe detach themselves from you. And that's painful. That's hard. If you're somebody struggling with addiction and you're already in a place of feeling pain, and then the support system that you have around you just continues to deteriorate over time, it can really just feel like you're being kicked when you're already down, right? It just perpetuates that loneliness and that helplessness that you're feeling. But for somebody struggling with addiction, I would want them to know that while it can feel very lonely and isolating, you are not alone. There are so many agencies that exist for one reason, so many people who have dedicated their careers to one thing, and that's helping you heal. It takes an incredible amount of courage to ask for help. But for somebody struggling in the clutches of addiction, even when you are at a place where you've come to realize that the way that you're living is not sustainable, I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. You don't have to have all of the answers as to how to get to the other side of it, right? All you have to do is make that first step and ask for help. That's our job. We're here to help you navigate the rest of that. And we're here whenever you're ready, so that would just be the message I would want people to hear, is that you're not alone. There are so many people that care about you and see you as a human being. Don't just see you as an addiction or as a substance use disorder, that believe in who you are as a person and believe that your life is worth saving. So I would just encourage them to reach out to us and ask for help.
And before you even tackle the 12-step program, take those baby steps and take that first step, as you say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And 12-step, might not even be for everybody. We have a lot of people that come through our doors that say, well, I've tried 12-step or I've tried inpatient, fill in the blank, right? We've all had our own experiences of walking this journey, and maybe we've just run out of ideas. We don't know what else to try. We don't know what other resources are out there. And that's okay. You can come to us with all of that, and we can talk through your experiences, talk through what is going to be the best fit for you, and find resources and services that are actually a good fit for you, for what you're struggling with, to address those core issues, so that we're working on a long-term solution to the substance use disorder, not just a temporary Band-Aid. We're going to actually work with you to find what is going to be the best fit for you, because that means that we're going to increase our chances that it's going to be sustainable and that you're going to be successful in achieving your long-term goals of recovery.
And like you said, it's not a quick fix. It's a lifetime journey.
It is. And many, many people do not get it right the first time. We have many clients that we work with who have attempted to find sobriety, find recovery several times. And it doesn't work the first time, sometimes the second time, sometimes the fifth time, right? I mean, that story is different for everybody. So it's definitely not a one and done. And I think that's also something that's important for a loved one to hear, right? Because sometimes it can, especially if this is like your first go around with your loved one and trying to get them help, it's like you finally get them to a place where they're ready to take advantage of some help. They're finally ready to check into treatment, or they're finally willing to go to a meeting, and they achieve a little bit of success. You know, they have a few days or a few months or what have you of sobriety, and then they have a reoccurrence, and it's heartbreaking for the loved ones, but it's heartbreaking for that person also. You know, all those things, you're feeling them at different capacities from a different perspective, but the disappointment, the sadness, the discouragement, that's being felt by everybody involved. And so recognizing that even if that happens the first time, that doesn't mean that they'll never be successful. It just means that we have to go back to the drawing board.
My guest once again today on the phone is Becky Devine, and Becky is the Director of Special Projects at Recovery Resource Council, a North Texas nonprofit whose mission is to promote wellness and recovery from disorders relating to alcohol, substance use, trauma, and mental health. And we're highlighting them today because the month of April is Alcohol Awareness Month. It's a time to raise awareness and understanding of alcohol use and misuse. Recovery Resource Council is on the front lines in helping people, and they're dedicated to helping individuals and families with comprehensive care, both in person at their 3 campus locations and also online via telemental health. And you can find out more about their services and their programs at recoverycouncil.org. Let's talk about the work that Recovery Resource Council does, Becky. Let's talk about those services and the programs that you offer here in our area.
Recovery Resource Council, as you mentioned, Anna, when you introduced us, has been serving North Texas for, almost 80 years, which is incredible. We have such a strong footprint in the North Texas area, such a long reputation of offering these services. And, we've evolved a lot in these last 80 years. As you can imagine, the trends of what the community needs from us and the services that we need to offer have evolved over 80 years and unfortunately exponentially grown. There's much more demand for our services now than there ever has been. But we're Joint Commission accredited as an outpatient treatment provider. We provide a full range of substance use and behavioral health services for North Texans, everything from outpatient substance use treatment, mental health counseling, prevention education in schools, our post-overdose response teams in 5 counties here in North Texas. We also have housing programs, case management programs. We serve youth, adults, veterans, families, individuals experiencing homelessness. You name it, and we have a service that can help. Last year alone, we reached more than 65,000 people across 20 counties here in North Texas.
Wow.
So, yeah, our reach is far, it's wide, and our programs really meet people where they are. So you mentioned we have those 3 physical office spaces, but our services span 20 counties, and we don't need offices in all 20 of those counties because so many of our services go out into the community and meet people quite literally where they are. Whether it's in schools, in the community, in their homes, in a hospital, right? We're out there meeting with them where they are and trying to connect them to the services that they need.
Can you tell me more about the screening program that you have?
Sure. That's our OSAR program, which is Outreach, Screening, and Referral. So the OSAR program is actually a statewide program. It's offered all across the state of Texas. It's not a secret that there definitely are not enough state-funded resources available to serve the population of Texas. The system that Texas has put in place for individuals to locate and access those services is actually really great and really impressive. So Texas is divided into 11 regions. Each of those regions has an OSAR provider. And what those providers do is they are basically the launching off point for anybody who is wanting to have a conversation about getting help for substance use disorder. You can go to your local OSAR provider and just ask questions. Let them know that you're thinking about treatment, you're wanting to ask some questions, you want to know what's available, you want to know what you need, and they can have that conversation with you. So ultimately, they do a screening process with you that helps identify the level of care that would best support you, whether that's outpatient, maybe it's an inpatient facility, maybe you need detox. For example, if you're misusing alcohol, that is a substance, for example, that requires detox before you can actually go to treatment. So that assessment will help them gauge the level of care that will best support you. And then they will find providers that can take you on as a client and provide the services that you need. The great thing about OSAR is that it is the way that our most vulnerable populations can access the services they need. OSAR is the connection to state-funded treatment resources, which means that if you are utilizing OSAR services or treatment providers that are in network with OSAR, it's specifically designed for uninsured individuals who have low or no income. And it basically allows you to take advantage of those resources, and the state of Texas pays for those resources so that you can get the help that you need. But even if you have insurance, you can still go to your OSAR provider, and most of the OSAR providers are so well connected to resources in the community. They're happy to help you navigate what might be a good fit for you, even if you have insurance.
And if somebody wants more information about OSAR, go to recoverycouncil.org. All that information about their services and programs is right there on the website. That's recoverycouncil.org. Becky, let's dig a little deeper into your outpatient treatment services that you have.
Sure. So our outpatient treatment services, it is a completely virtual program. We have intensive outpatient and supportive outpatient. Basically, that is just part of that assessment I mentioned. They'll do, in that assessment is decide which of those programs would be a better fit for you. And it's essentially equates to how long you will participate in the program and how many sessions you'll participate in each week. And so that program is a combination of individual sessions with a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and then you also participate in group psychoeducational groups led by a licensed chemical dependency counselor. So you get kind of both aspects of the therapeutic experience and that treatment experience. You get to have one-on-one support with a chemical dependency counselor, and you also get to have that peer group support. Like I said, it's completely virtual, which is kind of unique in intensive outpatient and supportive outpatient programs, because many of them do require you to come to a facility for a portion of the day or for your groups. Our program is completely virtual. We moved to virtual service delivery during COVID, which allowed us to continue providing this critical service and this critical treatment to people who needed it. And it was so successful that we never went back to in-person. So it really removes a lot of the barriers that oftentimes keeps people from going to treatment. The groups are in the evenings and on the weekends, so it's okay if you work. Again, they're virtual, so you don't have to worry about childcare. You don't have to worry about transportation. You can join from a cell phone. You can join from a tablet, a laptop. We tried to really make it flexible and accessible so that we could get those services to as many people as needed. And again, distance is an issue. So we serve 20 counties. If we have an individual who needs access to those treatment services, if they want to participate in our virtual outpatient treatment program, they can do that from anywhere.
That's awesome, because you're right. There are so many barriers when someone thinks about having to go to rehab and leaving their job or leaving their family or their pets behind. And by doing it virtually, you really take away those barriers.
Yes. And a lot of times we underestimate those things as barriers. Like you mentioned, Anna, we have people who come to us and say, okay, well, I want to go to treatment, but what about, you said pets, right? I think that's a huge issue. We love our pets. They're like our children. And we don't always have somebody who is willing to take on the responsibility of our animals for weeks or a month at a time. Our homes, our belongings. A lot of times people lose sight of all of those things and often don't realize that they can be barriers to somebody taking advantage of those services that they really need. And while it might seem odd to think like, well, somebody is, they're at rock bottom struggling with a substance use disorder. They could be nearly dying and they're not willing to walk away from their pet or leave their apartment for a month. And it's like, when you're in the clutches of addiction, those things around you are oftentimes the only things you have that are meaningful to you,
Yeah.
right? Your pets, your belongings. No, they're not willing to walk away from that, especially when they don't know what's waiting for them on the other side of treatment. So it can be terrifying. I wouldn't want to leave my home and my pets for 30 days, right?
I
So
hear you.
imagine somebody struggling with addiction. There's so much uncertainty. They're so overwhelmed. They're so scared. And then you're asking them to walk away from the only things that bring them comfort and bring familiarity to them. Of course, they're not going to be willing to do that. So virtual service delivery really can be the saving grace, so to speak, to help individuals get the life-saving services they need.
My guest once again today on the phone is Becky Devine, and Becky is the Director of Special Projects at Recovery Resource Council, a North Texas nonprofit whose mission is to promote wellness and recovery from disorders relating to alcohol, substance use, trauma, and mental health. The month of April is Alcohol Awareness Month. It's a time to raise awareness and to raise understanding of alcohol use and misuse. And so that is why we are highlighting the great work that Recovery Resource Council is doing. Once again, that website, recoverycouncil.org. Becky, recently you all kicked off the Transforming for Tomorrow campaign. What can you tell
Yes.
me about this campaign?
So the Transforming for Tomorrow campaign marks a really exciting new chapter for Recovery Resource Council. As I mentioned earlier, as North Texas grows, so does the urgent need for accessible addiction and mental health services. This campaign is our response to that growing need. Building purpose-driven campuses in Fort Worth and Dallas that will expand our reach and strengthen care for individuals and families facing substance use and trauma and mental health challenges. Like we've mentioned a couple times during this interview, we have been serving North Texas for nearly 80 years, and this is the first time we have ever built our own building.
Oh, wow.
we've
That's
we've
incredible.
always just occupied other spaces. Now we've owned our own spaces, but we've purchased existing buildings. So this is our first time to really have an opportunity to design campuses built for our specific needs. So it's very exciting. We invite anybody to visit our website, recoverycouncil.org/transforming for tomorrow. That'll take you directly to the page for the Transforming for Tomorrow campaign. Learn more about the incredible work we do, learn about the great plans we have for our new campuses in Dallas and Fort Worth, and consider making a donation. Every dollar that we get to support us brings hope and healing within reach for thousands of North Texans.
Becky, we keep talking about this great need here in our area for the services and the programs that you provide. And I hear adults all the time say that they're so glad that they're not growing up in this day and age because of the stressors that kids face now, not just from social media, but just from life in general. Are these stressors leading to an increase in drug and alcohol use among youth? Is that what you're seeing here in our area?
No doubt, yes. There has been a significant increase in addiction among young people in recent years. Thankfully, adolescent overdose deaths have slightly declined in the most recent data that's been published, but the number of adolescent overdose fatalities still remains more than double what it was pre-pandemic. So we still definitely need to be concerned. We are still in the midst of a huge crisis in our country when it comes to adolescent substance use. And I think several factors contribute to this mental health challenges since COVID. We know that the pandemic exacerbated mental health issues among adolescents, leading many of them to misuse substances as a coping mechanism. Accessibility on social media. Social media platforms, it's not a secret. They are the number one method for young people to access illicit substances in today's societies. It has made it so much easier than it ever has been in the past for our kids and our youth to access these illicit substances. If they have a device that can connect to the internet, they can access illicit substances. And it's not through apps that are unfamiliar to most of us. It is through mainstream social media apps. They're just being used as the platform to market and purchase illicit substances. And, of course, there's always environmental influences. That has not changed. Factors like family history of substance use, parental supervision and support, childhood trauma, socioeconomic stressors. These are all things that really can just act as force multipliers, if you will, when we're talking about risk factors with youth.
One of the things that you offer with Recovery Resource Council is youth and adult prevention education. And I'm sure there are parents here in North Texas reaching out asking for what can I do and what do I need to look out for?
Sure, yes. Our prevention services are a huge part of what we offer. It's one of our largest departments. We've been providing evidence-based prevention services for over 30 years. So it's a huge core of what we do at Recovery Resource Council. We offer evidence-based programs in schools, but also in many other areas of the community. Like you said, we do prevention services with adults. We go into treatment centers, we go into community centers, after-school clubs, different things like that, summer camps, anywhere where kids are at or where people are at that need to hear the message of prevention. We're there. We meet them where they are to deliver the important messages of prevention education. And for parents, gosh, the biggest, we could do a whole interview just on this, Anna, just on youth. But I would say for parents, I think the number one thing I would tell you is just have conversations, have them early, start normalizing how your child deals with stress. Let them know that it's okay for them to come to you and say that they're overwhelmed or they have too much on their plate. I think that's, like we mentioned, and all the things that contribute to youth stress. Sometimes we as parents are a part of what's contributing to our kids' stress. We put a lot of pressure on our kids to do well in sports or do well in school or do well in their extracurriculars or in our church or in our community, right? Whatever the story is for you and your family. And sometimes we have to recognize that when our kids are overwhelmed, they need to have something taken off their plate. So we have to open the door to that communication. We have to let them know that it's okay for them to come to us and tell them that they're burned out and that we're going to hear them, we're going to validate them, and we're going to work with them to try to find a solution and try to alleviate that and teach them healthy coping mechanisms. Teach them how to properly process their emotions so that they're not looking for that relief in substances. Our prevention programs in schools, a lot of people think of, like DARE back in the day, and it's very different. We've come a long way. Our prevention groups now, you might sit through several of our prevention education groups. It's a series of lessons, so it's not a one and done. We'll come in, we'll work with a school or work with a group for several weeks. And you might sit through several of our lessons and you may never hear something directly referenced about drugs or substance use. But what you're going to hear are a lot of the things addressed that oftentimes lead a child to experimenting. So we're going to talk about peer pressure. We're going to talk about social emotional learning, processing your emotions, communication, right? All of these things that we know sometimes can be the factor that pushes a kid to use substances. So for parents at home, I would say, have those conversations with your kids. Start talking about it young. Start talking about it early. And don't be afraid. A lot of times we hear parents say like, oh, I want to ask a question, or I saw something in their phone that, I'm a little worried, but I don't want to make them mad. Well, I have a teenager, and I'll tell you, as many of us know who have kids, like making your kids mad is like part of the job description.
Yes,
right?
it is.
It is, right? And we're willing to make our kids mad if we tell them they have to do their chores, or we tell them they have to eat their vegetables, or there's lots of areas in our lives where we're willing to have a difficult conversation with our kids and risk them getting mad at us. So why wouldn't you be willing to do that when it comes to substance use?
Absolutely. And if you have a loved one who is struggling, reach out to Recovery Resource Council. recoverycouncil.org is the website. Find out more about their outpatient counseling, support services, the screening, their veteran services, the youth and adult prevention education. I want to thank my guest on the phone, Becky Devine, the Director of Special Projects at Recovery Resource Council, with 3 campuses, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Denton, and serving 20 counties. Becky, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you, Anna, for having me.